Hello there, and welcome back to another video. Recently in the comments on one of my videos, I had an interaction with someone who was under the impression that Sabine Wren was a Mary Sue, which I don't believe to be the case at all. So today, I'm going to explain the lore behind Sabine and break down exactly why she isn't a Mary Sue. Without further delay, let's get into the video. One of the major problems people seem to have with Sabine is her ability with the Force that is on display in the season finale of Ahsoka. Now, I'll admit, I was a bit skeptical of this at first too, but I thought about it afterwards and it actually makes sense, and the lore supports it. Many seem to forget that the maker himself, George Lucas, has stated that everybody is Force sensitive. Episode 3 of Ahsoka also did an excellent job at conveying this when Ahsoka herself sat down with Sabine and explained this. Sabine asks Ahsoka that if it is true that the Force resides in all living things, how come not everybody uses it? Her master admits that talent is a factor, and this is where the midichlorians play their role. The amount of midichlorians within an individual determines their potential with the Force. Sabine's would be higher than the usual being, given her bloodline can be traced back to Clan Vizsla. Clan Vizsla was of course home to Tar Vizsla, the first Mandalorian Jedi and creator of the Darksaber. One of my favourite quotes is, "Hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard." And this is true, even in Star Wars. A high midichlorian count, also known as talent, can only get you so far. You still had to put in the time training to become capable with the Force. If you didn't, Anakin would have hardly spent any time in the Jedi Temple at all. George Lucas spoke on this as well, where he compared taking the time to learn yoga or karate as similar to learning to use the Force. Sabine had put in the time training in the recent Ahsoka series with, you guessed it, Ahsoka Tano. Not only here, but the two characters referred to a time before the series where they had a master and apprentice relationship. Going back to Rebels as well, she was trained by Ezra Bridger and Kanan Jarrus at various times. This leads me to my next point, specifically the brief training she undertook with Kanan in Rebels. Kanan is teaching her basic saber techniques after she has acquired the Darksaber, but she is struggling. He discusses it with Hera, describing Sabine's mind as blocked to the Force, and it is tightly wound. A lot of this could be attributed to the trauma of her family not standing by her when she took a stand against the Empire, which resulted in her leaving Mandalore and finding the Ghost Crew. Years later, towards the end of the Galactic Civil War, the Night of 1,000 Tears happened, where the Empire purged Mandalore and Sabine's family were among the victims. It was around this time as well that Ahsoka had taken on Sabine as an apprentice, yet parted ways with her, fearing she was training for the wrong reasons after what had happened to her home. Ahsoka feared that if Sabine unlocked her potential, she would become dangerous. This potential, I believe, once again refers to Sabine's bloodline being part of the Vizsla line. In Rebels, Kanan says that within herself, Sabine couldn't find balance, and it is clear this issue was still present. In the season finale of Ahsoka, Ahsoka takes a leaf out of her master's book by vowing to stay by Sabine's side, no matter what happens next. She promises to be there for her. You can see the moment something clicks within Sabine. I believe Ahsoka's vote of confidence in her, plus the fact that her little family of Ahsoka, Ezra, and Huyang have been reunited, has alleviated the internal anguish she was feeling. She was able to let go of what had happened on Mandalore and to her original family. She had found some balance, and the mind that was once tightly wound was no longer so bad. That master and apprentice relationship was now one she gravitated towards, no longer being resistant and stubborn. Ahsoka then provides her with some words of wisdom, telling her to train her mind and body, and to trust in the Force. Later in the episode, Sabine's life is on the line when she is being choked by an undead death trooper. With her lightsaber laying in front of her on the ground, her only option is to trust in the Force to pull it towards her, where she dispatches her enemy. This was the natural progression I thought her journey towards using the Force would take. However, soon after this, she displays an even larger aptitude for the Force, which upon seeing it, I thought was a bit far-fetched. I then came across this old George Lucas interview, and when paired with the scene of her helping Ezra onboard the Chimera, it just makes perfect sense. I made a short of it at the time, so I'll include it here if you haven't seen it.
Ultimately, doesn't it take, particularly in religion, a leap of faith, what Kierkegaard's leap of faith?
Yes, definitely. And that's you'll notice Luke uses that quite a bit through the films, not to rely on his senses, not to rely on the computers, but to rely on faith. That is what use the Force is a leap of faith, that there are mysteries and powers larger than we are, and that you have to trust your feelings in order to access these things.
It truly was a great piece of George Lucas Star Wars. To summarize and bring this to a close, it's probably a good idea to determine what a Mary Sue is exactly. The consensus across many references is that a Mary Sue is inexplicably competent, free of weaknesses to the point of it being unrealistic, and not possessing any real character flaws. There's 3 prongs there, like a trident, so I'll attack them one by one. Sabine's competence is easily explainable and should not even be up for debate. She is a Mandalorian warrior and was trained by some of the best Jedi in the galaxy, Kanan, Ezra, and Ahsoka. This wasn't overnight either. This was something years in the making that she had to put time and effort into. Sabine has her struggles that she must work to overcome, and in overcoming these is what unlocks her ability with the Force. She had to deal with creating weapons as part of the Imperial Academy of Mandalore, believing they would be used for good. Finding out they would not be, she felt guilty and left her home planet, being labelled a traitor by the Empire and her family. She lost Kanan and then Ezra shortly after. She was labelled a hero for the liberation of Lothal, although had no feelings of being a hero. Her home planet was then purged, where she lost all of her family after having reconnected with them. She then had a difficult relationship with her master, Ahsoka Tano, which was finally alleviated after Ahsoka was able to work through some of her pain and trauma with her own master. I hope this video was helpful to some of you guys, and maybe even changed your minds if you had come into this with the notion that Sabine is a Mary Sue. She has been in some of the most truly Star Wars scenes, and I think the lore behind her big Force push to help Ezra get home was perfect George Lucas Star Wars. That's it from me this time, guys, and until next time, may the Force be with you, always.